Hello students, welcome to the lecture on managing cross-functional drivers in supply chain. And after this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand the drivers of supply chain performance, define the framework for structuring drivers, explain the role of sourcing in supply chain, discuss the planning for significant procurement, understand the effective risk management in global sourcing, define the avenues to mitigate risks, explain the procurement cycle. Let's start with the introduction. The following are the important drivers of the supply chain. Logistics drivers: facilities, warehouse or storage locations or factory location. Inventory, stock of raw materials or finished goods. Transportation: moving of goods from one place to another. Cross-functional drivers: pricing, cost of goods. Information: information is nothing but the customer needs and wants. Sourcing: procuring raw materials for production activities. If information is not available, such as market need and demand, we cannot procure the material and we cannot fix the exact price. So these three functions are called as cross-functional drivers. Sourcing is the set of business processes required to purchase goods and services. Managers must first decide which tasks will be outsourced and those that will be performed within the firm. Let us now understand the drivers of supply chain performance. A company's supply chain achieves the balance between responsiveness and efficiency that best meets the needs of the company's competitive strategy. To understand how a company can improve supply chain performance in terms of responsiveness and efficiency, we must examine the logistical and cross-functional drivers of supply chain performance: facilities, inventory, transportation, information, sourcing and pricing. First, we define each driver and discuss its impact on the performance of the supply chain. Facilities are the actual physical locations in the supply chain network where product is stored, assembled, or fabricated. The two major types of facilities are production sites and storage sites. Decisions regarding the role, location, capacity, and flexibility of facilities have a significant impact on the supply chain's performance. For instance, an auto parts distributor striving for responsiveness could have many warehousing facilities located close to customers, even though this practice reduces efficiency. Inventory encompasses all raw materials, work in process, and finished goods within a supply chain. Changing inventory policies can dramatically alter the supply chain's efficiency and responsiveness. For example, a clothing retailer can make itself more responsive by stocking large amounts of inventory and satisfying customer demand from stock. Transportation entails moving inventory from point to point in the supply chain. Transportation can take the form of many combinations of modes and routes, each with its own performance characteristics. Transportation choices have a large impact on supply chain responsiveness and efficiency. For example, a mail order catalog company can use a faster mode of transportation, such as FedEx, to ship products, thus making its supply chain more responsive but also less efficient given the high costs associated with using FedEx. Information consists of data and analysis concerning facilities, inventory, transportation, costs, prices, and customers throughout the supply chain. Information is potentially the biggest driver of performance in the supply chain because it directly affects each of the other drivers. Sourcing is the choice of who will perform a particular supply chain activity, such as production, storage, transportation, or the management of information. At the strategic level, These decisions determine what functions a firm performs and what functions the firm outsources. Sourcing decisions affect both the responsiveness and efficiency of a supply chain. After Motorola outsourced much of its production to contract manufacturers in China, it saw its efficiency improve, but its responsiveness suffer because of the long distances. Pricing determines how much a firm will charge for goods and services that it makes available in the supply chain. Pricing affects the behavior of the buyer of the good or service, thus affecting supply chain performance. The supply chain is made responsive by using information technology to convey order information effectively, structuring very flexible manufacturing facilities to be able to produce in small lots, and using responsive transportation to deliver the furniture to the customer. Now we will study the framework for structuring drivers. The goal of a supply chain strategy is to strike the balance between responsiveness and efficiency that fits with the competitive strategy. To reach this goal, a company must structure the right combination of the 3 logistical and 3 cross-functional drivers discussed earlier. For each of the individual drivers, supply chain managers must make a trade-off between efficiency and responsiveness based on interaction with the other drivers. The combined impact of these drivers then determines the responsiveness and the profits of the entire supply chain. A study of the 6 drivers may indicate the need to change the supply chain and potentially even the competitive strategy. Consider this framework using Walmart as an example. Walmart's competitive strategy is to be a reliable, low-cost retailer for a wide variety of mass consumption goods. To utilize information in the supply chain, Walmart has invested significantly more than its competitors in information technology. As a result, Walmart is a leader in its use of the information driver to improve responsiveness and decrease inventory investment. Walmart feeds demand information across the supply chain to suppliers who manufacture only what is being demanded. The supply chain's ability to share demand information has required large investments, but the result is an improved supply chain in terms of both responsiveness and efficiency. Production. Production refers to the capacity of a supply chain to make and store products. The facilities of production are factories and warehouses. The fundamental decision that managers face when making production decisions is how to resolve the trade-off between responsiveness and efficiency. If factories and warehouses are built with a lot of excess capacity, they can be very flexible and respond quickly to wide swings in product demand. Factories can be built to accommodate any of 2 approaches to manufacturing. Product focus. A factory that takes a product focus performs the range of different operations required to make a given product line, from fabrication of different product parts to assembly of these parts. Functional focus. A functional approach concentrates on performing just a few operations, such as only making a select group of parts or only doing assembly. These functions can be applied to making many different kinds of products. A product approach tends to result in developing expertise about a given set of products at the expense of expertise about any particular function. There are 3 main approaches to use in warehousing. Stock keeping unit, SKU storage. In this traditional approach, all of a given type of product are stored together. This is an efficient and easy to understand way to store products. Job lot storage. In this approach, all the different products related to the needs of a certain type of customer or related to the needs of a particular job are stored together. This allows for an efficient picking and packing operation, but usually requires more storage space than the traditional SKU storage approach. Cross-docking, an approach that was pioneered by Walmart in its drive to increase efficiencies in its supply chain. In this approach, product is not actually warehoused in the facility. Inventory. Inventory is spread throughout the supply chain and includes everything from raw material to work in process to finished goods that are held by the manufacturers, distributors and retailers in a supply chain. There are three basic decisions to make regarding the creation and holding of inventory. Cycle inventory. This is the amount of inventory needed to satisfy demand for the product in the period between purchases of the product. Companies tend to produce and to purchase in large lots in order to gain the advantages that economies of scale can bring. However, with large lots also comes an increased carrying cost. Safety inventory. Inventory that is held as a buffer against uncertainty. If demand forecasting could be done with perfect accuracy, then the only inventory that would be needed would be cycle inventory. Seasonal inventory. This is inventory that is built up in anticipation of predictable increases in demand that occur at certain times of the year. For example, it is predictable that demand for antifreeze will increase in the winter. Location. Location refers to the geographical setting of supply chain facilities. It also includes the decisions related to which activities should be performed in each facility. The responsiveness versus efficiency trade-off here is the decision whether to centralize activities in fewer locations to gain economies of scale and efficiency, or to decentralize activities in many locations close to customers and suppliers in order for operations to be more responsive. Location decisions have strong impacts on the cost and performance characteristics of a supply chain. Once the size, number and location of facilities are determined, that also defines the number of possible paths through which products can flow on the way to the final customer. Transportation. This refers to the movement of everything from raw material to finished goods between different facilities in a supply chain. In transportation, the trade-off between responsiveness and efficiency is manifested in the choice of transport mode. Fast modes of transport, such as airplanes, are very responsive, but also more costly. There are 6 basic modes of transport that a company can choose from. Ship, which is very cost efficient, but also the slowest mode of transport. It is limited to use between locations that are situated next to navigable waterways and facilities such as harbors and canals. Rail, which is also very cost efficient but can be slow. This mode is also restricted to use between locations that are served by rail lines. Pipelines can be very efficient but are restricted to commodities that are liquids or gases such as water, oil and natural gas. Trucks are a relatively quick and very flexible mode of transport. Trucks can go almost anywhere. The cost of this mode is prone to fluctuations though, as the cost of fuel fluctuates and the condition of roads varies. Airplanes are a very fast mode of transport and are very responsive. This is also the most expensive mode, and it is somewhat limited by the availability of appropriate airport facilities. Electronic transport is the fastest mode of transport, and it is very flexible and cost efficient. Given these different modes of transportation and the location of the facilities in a supply chain, managers need to design routes and networks for moving products? Information. Information is the basis upon which to make decisions regarding the other 4 supply chain drivers. It is the connection between all of the activities and operations in a supply chain, to the extent that this connection is a strong one, that is, the data is accurate, timely and complete. The companies in a supply chain will each be able to make good decisions for their own operations. Information is used for 2 purposes in any supply chain: coordinating daily activities related to the functioning of the other 4 supply chain drivers: production, inventory, location, and transportation. The companies in a supply chain use available data on product supply and demand to decide on weekly production schedules, inventory levels, transportation routes, and stocking locations, forecasting and planning to anticipate and meet future demands. Available information is used to make tactical forecasts to guide the setting of monthly and quarterly production schedules and timetables. Information is also used for strategic forecasts to guide decisions about whether to build new facilities, enter a new market, or exit an existing market. Now we will discuss the role of sourcing in supply chain. Purchasing, also called procurement, is the process by which companies acquire raw materials, components, products, services, or other resources from suppliers to execute their operations. Sourcing is the entire set of business processes required to purchase goods and services. For any supply chain function, the most significant decision whether to outsource the function or perform it in-house. Outsourcing results in supply chain function being performed by a third party. Outsourcing is one of the most important issues facing a firm, and actions across industries tend to be varied. The supply chain surplus is the difference between the value of a product for the customer and the total cost of all supply chain activities involved in bringing the product to the customer. The supply chain surplus is the total size of the pie that all supply chain participants, including the customer, get to share. Our basic premise is that outsourcing makes sense if it increases the supply chain surplus without significantly affecting risks. Supplier scoring and assessment is the process used to rate supplier performance. Suppliers should be compared based on their impact on the supply chain surplus and total cost.
Anna, I clearly see how I can add value and contribute to the success of Win Plus, but I still need to understand which steps I have to execute when running a procurement process.
You can visualize the procurement processes for recurrent purchases, like the blades, as a figure 8 with 2 closed loops. One is an upstream loop and the other one a downstream loop.
Okay, can you please describe the activities part of the upstream loop?
Of course. The upstream loop includes all the activities that take place prior to the finalization of the contract, which is also called the commitment point. Needs assessment, market analysis, and supplier selection are all examples of activities that are part of the upstream loop. The upstream process itself is also called sourcing.
Oh, I see. Now I understand what sourcing represents. It groups all the tasks I must execute before signing the contract with the best blade supplier for the new low-cost wind turbine. What about the downstream activities?
The downstream activities include all steps that must be completed in order to make sure the blades are ordered and delivered in line with the contractual agreements. Order fulfillment, invoice payment, and the supplier performance measurement are part of the downstream loop. The downstream process itself is also called operational procurement.
The circular patterns of the 2 procurement loops show that the procurement processes are continuous. The downstream activities will provide input for the upstream activities and vice versa. For one-time purchases, such as a new machine for the assembly plant, the process can be best visualized as a circle. Each step in the circle will be executed sequentially.
Relationship to the state procurement policy. The state procurement policy provides flexibility for agencies to determine the most effective procurement strategy to achieve the desired outcome, either at the level of the individual procurement or for whole categories of goods, services. The objectives of the state procurement policy are to advance government priorities. These priorities are now set out as part of the government's ambitions in towards Q2, Tomorrow's Queensland. Achieve value for money. The concept of value for money is not restricted to price alone. The value for money assessment must include consideration of contribution to the advancement of government priorities, ensure probity and accountability for outcomes. An agency must conduct its procurement activities in a transparent manner which demonstrates probity and accountability. The state procurement policy mandates that as a minimum, significant procurement plans must establish the objectives of the procurement, specify how the procurement supports the achievement of agency procurement objectives, establish the status of the supply market relevant to the area of procurement and the likely impact the procurement will have on the market, evaluate potential buying strategies and identify the preferred strategy to be followed. Specify measures for evaluation of the implementation of the supply strategy. What are significant procurements? Significant procurement projects should be identified each year in an agency's corporate procurement plan. When to prepare a significant procurement plan? Every agency must plan for the significant procurement projects identified in their corporate procurement plans. These significant procurement plans must be approved by the agency's accountable officer or their delegate. Significant procurement plans should be seen as the business case from the procurement function's perspective to obtain approval to approach the market as planned. Significant procurement projects can be significant single, one-off procurements or a number of smaller projects in a category of like goods and or services which when combined are considered significant. Why plan for significant procurement? Significant procurement planning and development of sound procurement strategies lead to consistently better value for money, higher quality project and service delivery, improved opportunities for sustainable procurement, and reduced risks to the agency. The significant procurement framework. The framework at figure 3.4 illustrates the key phases in the planning and implementation of significant procurement projects. From the planning phase, demand review, market analysis and procurement strategies, through to implementation of the procurement strategy, supplier evaluation and selection, and managing supply arrangements. This guide deals with the planning phase. There are numerous benefits to making global sourcing part of a company's packaging supply chain strategy. A few key benefits are lower cost of goods, low tooling costs for custom packaging, flexible and low minimum order quantities, and reduced lead times for development and commercialization of custom packaging components. Risks with non-US sourcing. Global sourcing introduces many benefits into the packaging supply chain, but along with those benefits are numerous complexities that, if not managed with precision and expertise, can lead to increased costs and dissatisfaction. Simply put, These are commonly referred to as risks. Time difference. Sometimes dealing with the various time zones in the US can be problematic. Language barriers. By virtue of dealing with a global manufacturing partner, we must deal with the fact that their native language will be different to ours. Quality expectations. In a perfect world, we would command and receive product with zero defects. Compliance issues. One compliance issue that must be integrated into every global sourcing decision is social compliance. Production scheduling. A key step to ensuring that product is delivered on time, knows when goods are being produced and ultimately when they are shipping. In many cases, a globally sourced item is part of a larger bill of materials used to produce a finished good. Now that the risks have been identified, what can be done to ensure that these risks are avoided and that the global sourcing process is as smooth and cost-effective as possible? A highly effective approach deals with and manages risk at 3 phases of the sourcing process. Phase 1. Pre-production. Everything must start with a factory evaluation, and a comprehensive factory evaluation starts with a physical inspection. While walking the floor, it is important to take notice of the cleanliness of the production environment as well as storage areas for raw materials and finished goods. Also, the condition of the equipment can offer insight into the quality of the operations and products that are produced. This portion of the factory inspection should also include a review of the products produced as well as an understanding of current customers buying from the factory. Phase 2. Production. The ultimate goal of a well-managed second phase is to ensure that the customer gets what they want when they want it. A perfect scenario would have feet on the street who are walking the floors when production is underway. To trust that our production is being effectively managed while we are miles away may lead to dissatisfaction. Many customers can save money by working with a sourcing partner that has the resources to cover numerous, if not all, production runs. Phase 3. Final inspection and logistics. Up to this point, there has been a tremendous amount of effort and communication put into the development and production process. It would be a shame to have all of the work fall to pieces because of a quality control issue or a shipping delay. Prior to loading a container and sealing the doors, a final inspection of the goods must happen. The tools used during the final inspection are the same ones that were established previously and are guided by acceptable quality levels dependent on the full size of the production run. Now coming to our next topic, procurement cycle. The procurement cycle occurs at the manufacturer-supplier interface and includes all processes necessary to ensure that materials are available for manufacturing to occur according to schedule. Procurement procedures. Procurement procedures detail the practical day-to-day job of implementing and supporting the institution's procurement policy and procurement strategy. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. The supply chain surplus is the difference between the value of a product for the customer and the total cost of all supply chain activities involved in bringing the product to the customer. Significant procurement planning and development of sound procurement strategies lead to consistently better value for money, higher quality project and service delivery, improved opportunities for sustainable procurement, and reduced risks to the agency. Inventory is spread throughout the supply chain and includes everything from raw material to work in process to finished goods that are held by the manufacturers, distributors and retailers in a supply chain. Transportation choices have a large impact on supply chain responsiveness and efficiency. Production refers to the capacity of a supply chain to make and store products.